Hey guys, what's up? My name is Gabe and this is Games with Gabe. If you recall from the last tutorial in this Python series, what we did was we went over file IO, how to read from a file, and we didn't go over how to write to a file. We will go over that in a future tutorial. I figured it would be good enough just to read from a file for now. In this tutorial, what we're going to be doing is going over another data structure in Python called dictionaries. And so these are also really useful. And then we'll be using this to count several letters in a file. So if you remember at the end of the last tutorial, I asked you to create a function called count letter, and then it takes in a file name and it takes in a string. And I probably should have said a letter too, so that you can actually count the letter. I'm going to go over how to code this. So I'll say definition count letter, and then I will take in a file name. I'll take in a file name and a letter. That's what I asked you. I didn't ask about a string because the file has the string. Okay. And so the way I would do this is I would say f equals open, and I would say file name with r, and then I would say for line in f, for char in line. I'd say if char equals letter, then we're going to initialize a variable up here. I'll say count equals 0, and then right here I would say count equals count plus 1, and I would go all the way back to the end of this and then say return count. Now if I say print count letter and give it the name of that test file we had, test.txt, and then the letter E, should count how many times the letter E appears in our test file. And if we go down here and run this, we get 5. Let's go to our test file. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 E's. So that's working properly. And so this is how I would have done it. If you did it a different way, that's fine, as long as it still works properly. Just double check and run it a few times with a few different letters and make sure it works okay. So what is this thing that I mentioned called dictionaries? Well, there are several times in programming, like we just went over this problem. I said I wanted you to count all of one letter, but that's not really useful. What if you wanted to count how many times every single letter appeared? Well, you could run that function 26 times with A through Z, and then 26 more times with capital A through capital Z, but that's really annoying. You don't want to do that. A better way would be if you had some sort of structure that basically allowed you to say, hey, how many times does letter A appear? How many times does letter B appear? How many times C appear? So on, so forth. And Python actually does have something that does exactly this, and it's called a dictionary. So if I go down here, clear this real quick, and then I say Python, and then if I say dictionary equals, and then I'm going to do open curly bracket, and I'll say A is 10, B is 0, C is 1, close curly bracket. Then if I say print dictionary, it prints it out just like I showed up there. And then if I said dictionary A, so dictionary for the letter A, it prints out 10, which is really cool. But I can't go the other way. I can't say dictionary 10 and it gives me an error and it says key error 10. What does that mean? So the way a dictionary works, it has these things on the left of the colon, which is called a key, and it has the things on the right of the colon, which is called a value. So it's exactly as you would think. A key value pair is just the key unlocks the value. The key shows you which value is there. So every key must be unique. You can't have two A's because that's the same key. Just like in the real world, if you have two of the same keys, they will open the same door. If you have two of the same keys, it will both lead to this letter 10. So you need one unique key for each thing. So that's sort of the drawback of a dictionary, is every single entry must be unique. But you can then use it to track unique values like letters. And so basically what it does is when you say dictionary and then you do the A like this, it actually goes and looks up this key, and then it tells you and returns what the value is at that key. So the key can be anything. It could be a number, it could be a string, it could be a Boolean, but that wouldn't be the best because there's only two possible values for that. Could be anything else, could be a full string, and it'll work in Python. And then the value can also be anything. It can be a list, it can be a string, it can be whatever you want it to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to experiment with these a little bit. how do you insert things into dictionaries? How do you take things out of dictionaries and everything? And so I'm actually going to go to idle because it's a little bit easier to mess around with things in idle. And so we'll create a little dictionary here. I'll call it dictionary equals open, close, curly brace. That's how you do an empty dictionary. Then I'm going to say dictionary A equals 5. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a new key called A and then store 5 as that value. So then if we print dictionary, then we see it says A5. And if we say dictionary A, whoops, then it'll say 5. What if we try to do dictionary and then B? Well, B doesn't exist, so what should happen? And then it gives us an error. It says key error, B does not exist. So it's telling us B is not there. So how can we test to see if B is there without raising an error? Because what if we're just checking to see, hey, does this thing even exist? Well, we can say print dictionary.get B, and then it says none. It says there is nothing there. But if we say print dictionary.get A, it says 5 because there's 5 there. So .get is sort of like the safe method to get something out of the dictionary. Okay. So this is sort of the two basic functions of a dictionary that you will end up using. And let's do a practice problem using it. Okay, so let's say we had this problem, which does exist in the real world. Say you need to create a function called add user, and then we're going to say username, and that should be good. So let's say we have this thing called add user, which is like a function for a website or something, and you're trying to add a user to your database of users. You know, it'll say if that user already exists, it's like, oh, user already exists, you can't use that username. So we're basically going to do the same thing. So we'll create an empty dictionary at first, then we'll say define add user, username. So the variable, we're just going to call it username, and we're going to expect that to be a string. And then what we'll say is if dictionary, whoops, no parentheses, if dictionary.get username does not equal none. So if that user, remember when we did idle and we saw that if the dictionary has something in there, so dictionary.get A, and then if we print that, print dictionary.get A, then it says none. That means there is nothing in there with A. But if it didn't say none, then we know that there is something in there with that key. So if it does not equal none, then we will print, sorry, a user already exists with that username. And then we'll basically try this function again. Else that user doesn't exist, then we'll say, okay, well, dictionary username equals true, which basically just means we have something in there. Just put it in there so that we know that this will never not equal none. So dictionary username equals true, which means we'll add a new key username and the value will be true, which means we have that user in the system. Then I'm going to do something we haven't done before. I'm going to create this thing called a main function, which isn't strictly necessary, but it's nice. And all this does is it basically just starts the program. And we know where the program starts by looking for main. So we'll say define main, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, no parameters. And then we'll just say while, we'll get this thing called user in, which is just the user input. And then we'll say equals an empty string. And then we'll say while user in does not equal q, or user in does not equal q for quit. Let's actually just do while user in dot lower, which will make all of the letters in that user input lowercase, does not equal quit, or user in dot lower does not equal q. So if they don't type in quit or q, then we will do this. We'll say user in equals input, enter a username, and we'll say add user, user in. So we will add in whatever that user just input to our database, which is just this dictionary. And then we will say it will print this if it's not exist. And then let's put please try a different one, so that they try a different one after that. And then we will go after this, we'll say print current database, and then we'll say end equals close quotations, so nothing in there. And then we'll say print, and then we'll say dictionary. So we'll print the dictionary. And then we'll just repeat forever until we're finished. And then right here we'll say if user_in.lower equals quit, or user_in.lower equals q, then break, which basically just means break out of this loop, stop everything you're doing, don't continue down to here. And then once we're done with the loop, we'll just say print done, which means we're done. And then down here, we have to say main because we have to get into here to start it. So we just call main at the bottom, which means start the program. So let's go down here. I'm still in idle here. And then I'm going to clear this and we will run this. So it says enter a username. I'll put Ambrosio. Let's just put Pizza Boss. So current database Pizza Boss, and it didn't tell me to enter a new one. Let's try it again, Pizza Boss. Sorry, a user already exists with that username. Please try a different one. So we say Pizza Boss 12, and then it adds that to the database. And then let's say we try Gabe, adds that to the database, and then I say Gabe again. User already exists. So you get the picture. And if I type in quit, it says done and it stops. So this is sort of our example problem. You can tell the code base is getting a little bit bigger. We have 29 lines, which is probably the biggest program we've written to this point. But it does something really cool, which is something you would need in the real world. Practice problem. What I want you to do. I want you to write a function that creates a dictionary of letter counts inside a file. I know I keep going over these files and counting letters and stuff, but it'll be cool. So basically what I want you to do is create something called count letters file name. And I want it to return A 0, B 22, 21, C 3, 32, Z 5, 45, which is very unlikely. But basically, so it just returns how many letters are in there. So couple things that you should be thinking about when you do this. You will need to initialize a dictionary with all the letters. Easy way to do that, you could say for a letter in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Dictionary letter equals 0. Easy. Another thing you're going to need to think about, so that will initialize it, and then you can just basically count the letters as you go through the file. Another thing you'll have to think about is I want these all to be lowercase. So I don't want it to count uppercase letters and lowercase letters differently. I want them all to just be lowercase. So you will need to use that dot lower function that we've been using for some other things. So give that a try, see how it goes. I'll go over the solution at the beginning of the next video. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Hope you like this. I'll see you next time.